Hi, we're going to continue with our internet study of the president and the responsibilities that he has. When you take a look at your notes, one side has a bunch of squares on it, and on the other side it has the notes that you'll fill in. We're going to start with the side that looks like the outline. And so what we're going to do is we're going to take a look at the presidential powers that the Constitution grants the chief executive. These can be found in Article 2, specifically Sections 2 and 3. You can go right to the Constitution and discover what the president is allowed to do and what he's not allowed to do. There's also an implied section. Remember, implied powers are the powers that need to be connected to the delegated powers, and they expand the president's power through the through the elastic clause. Now, granted, the elastic clause is in Article 1 and usually is applied to the legislative branch, but through time, that necessary and proper clause has also applied to the other two branches. So in the area of tradition, for decades, presidents only served 2 terms, or a maximum of 8 years. Well, until FDR came. So it was an informal power of the president, what became practice. And then when FDR ran for president and then served 4 terms, it became part of the Constitution. Our founding fathers really wanted a strong executive because there's no one to carry out the acts of Congress. It's the president's responsibility to protect liberty and private property and businesses, and it's his responsibility to keep the legislative branch in check. What we're going to do here is these are the actual powers that are granted in the U.S. Constitution. So first of all, his military power is to be commander-in-chief. This is really important because our commander-in-chief is a civilian. He is not a member of the military. And therefore, if the military were ever to take over the United States, that would be an illegal coup because our president is seen as the head of the military. He is not bound to military law. We've studied this before, but we do know that he has the appointment power. We've watched President Trump as he's gone about appointing people to various positions, whether they be an ambassador like Governor Branstad to China, Judge Gorsuch to the Supreme Court. He's added to his cabinet and the EOP, which is the Executive Office of the President. Okay. His 2 powers that are related to foreign power is that he has the power to conduct foreign policies. And so, for example, President Trump is in the process of meeting with lots of heads of state. Today, I believe, he is meeting with the president of Australia. To recognize countries is a huge power of the president, because when a power comes to be, meaning when they are born, people need to, the president needs to recognize it as it exists. I think the best way to explain what it means to recognize the country is to think about when you're walking down the mall and you see somebody and you recognize them. When you recognize them, you acknowledge them, you might have a conversation with them, you interact. But when you're walking down the aisles of a mall or a store and you don't recognize anybody, you don't interact with them, you don't encounter them, and you don't have anything really to do with them. And so that's why it's important when a president recognizes a country, they exist. In 1949, Israel went to war and it declared its independence. The very next day, the United States recognized it. And from that point on, Israel has existed in the eyes of the United States. There is a country that has not been recognized by the United States that's in the area of Israel, and that's called Palestine. We know that there are Palestinians. We have a president of Palestine. However, the United States has not recognized the territory that the Palestinians say they belong to them because we recognize Israel. Israel, we believe, has the power of that land and not the Palestinians. This has been a fought over piece of land forever, and it comes down to recognition. A president also has the power to enter into treaties with other countries. Treaties have kind of fallen by the wayside in exchange for presidential agreements or executive agreements. And that's basically a spit and a handshake between two foreign leaders. The next two have to do with criminal or civil law. This is the about power to grant reprieves, pardons, amnesty, and also the president has the ability to reduce punishments. A reprieve is where the president can cancel a punishment, and a lot of times this is done in exchange when someone is supposed to go to the death penalty. It's acknowledging that maybe you did it, but you're not going to face these consequences. A pardon oftentimes is seen as, we don't think you did it, and we're going to completely forgive you of all things. An amnesty is a group pardon. For example, I think it was President Clinton that pardoned all of the Vietnam veterans, the Vietnam draft dodgers who ran to Canada rather than to fight in the Vietnam War. By pardoning them, he allowed them to return to the United States without punishment. He also has the ability to reduce punishment for individuals. Those are called commute punishments. Many presidents do this at the end of their presidency, and so if you look at President Obama, he commuted a lot of punishments. He has the power to give the State of the Union address, and we know a lot about that, and he can call Congress into special session if such an emergency is needed. The president's power has greatly increased because of three basic ways. Because what we expect of the president has increased, the needs of the nation have changed what we expect of our president, and the mandate of the people, or what is demanded of us by the president, has changed. So for example, the inherent needs of the president. Thomas Jefferson bought the Louisiana Purchase because he believed that that was an inherent power. Simply because he's the president, he felt like at that time he had the power to do it, to purchase land, because the Constitution didn't say he couldn't. Teddy Roosevelt in 1900, he stated that the president can do whatever he wants as long as it's not forbidden in the Constitution. Now, there are a lot of modern scholars that would disagree with Mr. Roosevelt, and he greatly expanded the powers of the president. Not as much as his cousin Franklin did, but he said as long as the Constitution doesn't say it's illegal, then it should be legal. If we look at the immediate needs of the nation, I think that we can see that. In FDR, he greatly expanded the powers of the president through the Great Depression and expanding the president's economic powers. George W. Bush did it as well with 9/11. He made a lot of mandates regarding Guantanamo, arresting people without due process, the Patriot Act. And when the emergency of Katrina happened, the powers of the president changed. As the people of the United States, we demanded that the presidency change. Again, FDR's programs were accepted because the people accepted them. He did that through fireside chats. Ronald Reagan got away with some things as president. It's not that he did anything illegal, but he expanded the powers of the president because he got the mandate of the people by doing radio programs. It might be something for President Trump to think about, that to go back to his base. I've noticed that lately President Trump has been going back to what some people call his campaign rallies. And I think that what he's doing here is trying to get the mandate of the people, get the people back behind him by the marketing that he did so well to win the presidency. Okay? All right, so thanks for watching, and we will continue with our internet study of the presidency while you work on your legislative simulation. See you later. Thanks a lot.